right. My clock says 8 a.m., so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to kind of go over, and we're excited to show you a sneak peek of our new CI710S SpectraVue leaf spectrometer. So thanks everyone for joining us. And before we get started, I'm going to go over some kind of housekeeping and some introductions. So today you'll notice that monitoring our chat is Susie Truitt. She's our distributor manager. She's going to be moderating the webinar today. She's been with the company for over 8 years. She'll be posting relevant links and directing you to where my links in my presentation are going to be going to. And she'll be doing that all in the chat and monitoring that as well. Before we get any further, it is important that if you do have an actual question regarding the content of this webinar, anything that I talk about or anything that you see in the demonstration today, please, for all those questions, use the Q&A function in Zoom and don't use the chat box. So please use the Q&A function, which is designated by the arrow in this diagram here on the right. Please just refrain from using the chat function for anything other than if you're experiencing some sort of technical difficulties. So if you are experiencing a lack of sound or a lack of video, then please go ahead and put that in the chat box. But if it's a question regarding anything about the content of the webinar, please, like I said, use the Q&A function. And like I said, Susie will be posting all relevant links and all the extra information that you might need within that chat box. So you can check the chat box if you're looking for those links. A little bit about myself. So my name's Galen. I'm an application scientist here at CID Bioscience. I have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry, a master's degree in food science from Michigan State University. I am an IFT certified food scientist. In my previous work, I was managing an analytical food laboratory and working as a food safety consultant for the food manufacturing, produce, and cannabis sectors. And then also on the webinar today with us, we have our electrical engineer, Dylan. And Dylan has been with us for a while, and he's been working in product development where he helps design these new instruments and write all the software for them. And he has a Bachelor of Science degree from Washington State University in electrical engineering. And we're really happy to have him on to help us demonstrate the instrument that he's worked so hard to develop. So today's agenda, what we're going to do is I kind of just went over the introductions. I'll go over the features of the instrument, who will benefit from it, the potential applications. And then we'll go into some research papers that kind of highlight some current research using leaf spectroscopy, specifically using the CI710. And then I'll go into some more specifics in regard to the features of the SpectraVue as well as some of the specifications of the instrument. And then we'll end it with a product demonstration where Dylan will actually show you guys how the instrument works. And then we will go into a Q&A session, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have at the end. A little bit of a brief overview of our company. So we were founded in 1989, and CID Bioscience applies more than 30 years of experience in plant research instrumentation to help serve the research community as well as the commercial community. So what we specialize in is creating non-destructive tools for measurement of traits in plants, physiology traits specifically, and these tools that will help researchers acquire consistent and high quality data. What we are proud of ourselves, we really pride ourselves on, is the fact that we engineer, test, design, manufacture all of these instruments under one roof in Camas, Washington. So these instruments are all made in the USA. They're all designed by us in our little facility in Camas. So something that we're really proud of. So let's dive right into talking about the SpectraVue. We're really excited about the SpectraVue. It's a newly redesigned leaf spectrometer. It's meant for field use. It's portable and durable. And it's a really powerful tool that's going to put a lot of powerful analysis into the hands of researchers and agronomists. And it's going to allow you to collect, analyze, and view this plant data all in real time. So you can either, there's a lot of different, I guess, data outputs for this instrument, and it all is visualized on the new 7-inch touchscreen display. We have preloaded indices, plant indices that you're probably familiar with, like NDVI, the water band index, the photochemical reflectance index, and among a myriad of other indices that we've already loaded into the instrument. It does also have the ability for you to create your own indices, and that's something that actually we'll talk about here in a little bit with one of the studies that we're looking at. So it's a really nice feature to be able to actually input your own index and have it calculate that in real time for you as you take scans. And then we also have kind of a new ability with the CI710 SpectraVue, and what that is going to be the use of chemometric analysis and the chemometric techniques like PLS modeling or PCA modeling of the raw spectra in order to create kind of a model that will predict the specific analyte or specific component that you are interested in, that you're looking for. And so that's kind of a new cool feature that we're really excited about. And so things like nutrients, like micronutrients or macronutrients, water content, pigment concentrations, all that kind of stuff can be quantified with the SpectraVue, not just through these indices, but also by doing this kind of PLS modeling or this chemometric analysis of the raw spectra. So that's a really cool feature that we're really excited to get off the ground with this new instrument. Some applications that this instrument can be used for, really there's a wide variety of things that you can utilize this instrument for. Things like phenotyping or tracking phenological phases and identifying plants. Characterizing stress response is a really big one, and looking at changes in nutrient concentrations or pigment concentrations that might be caused by environmental stressors. Looking at maturity and aging, so looking at how a plant matures, or how it died, looking at the dieback of that plant. Looking at, as we'll see in a paper here in a little bit, looking at something like disease detection. And being able to detect disease early on before it's actually visible is another cool application. And then another one that we've seen actually with some great success is people utilizing this instrument in the classroom to educate their students, undergrads, or even in the high school level, using this tool to kind of help explain and teach plant physiology and things of that nature. So it's a great tool in the laboratory or out in the field. Some use cases, I kind of already went over a little bit of this, but the big ones that we see are investigating plant stress. So if you want to utilize or look at some of the already built-in indices, so something like the NDVI, the PRI, or the water band index, looking at those to kind of monitor the stress level of the plant based on environmental factors or some sort of treatment that you're giving the plant. Then there's also looking at the phytochemicals, looking at chlorophyll, carotenoids, anthocyanins as well in response to stress. You can see those, just in the actual raw spectra, or you can use any of the number of built-in indices that have been already created by researchers in the past that we've loaded onto the instrument. And then the new kind of application that we're excited about is deploying these chemometric techniques like PLS to create, qualitative or quantitative models from the raw spectra to determine nutrient content. And these are all things that are, have been done or are starting to be done by the plant science community. And so we're excited to be able to have a tool that's easy to use, portable, field ready, that can actually acquire all this data for you in real time and analyze it. So let's go over I'm going to go over 3 different case studies. These are actual publications and that utilize the CI710 and that have, are kind of examples of the use of this instrument through these various use cases that I just mentioned. And so this first one is looking at leaf nutrient concentrations in eucalyptus plantations. And so what they did actually, this is kind of a novel approach here, as opposed to doing something like a typical, PCA or PLS analysis of the raw spectra in order to build a quantitative prediction model. They actually went and created indices for each of these micronutrients that are present, and basically used reflectance data from the spectrometer to create these indices that can non-destructively predict the micronutrient content levels in these eucalyptus leaves. And so they found success with a number of these micronutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, copper, and sulfur all had very strong correlations. And so they were able to successfully build a model, or successfully build these indices actually, based on the data set they collected for those 4 micronutrients. With the other ones, one of the biggest, I think, factors with trying to create a quantitative, either an index or a model, is collecting a big enough data set that actually can be really important when it comes to building these models. So I think that in the future, for these kind of smaller quantity micronutrients, that it's very important to have these larger data sets, which sometimes isn't feasible and sometimes not possible. But with the new CI710S SpectraVue, I think that collecting more data is going to be something that is actually a lot easier for the user, because it's a very rapid instrument, and you can collect data in less than a second, basically. So they had some success with this, and that's one of the applications that we think is really cool, is creating these customized indices in order to help basically predict micronutrient content without having to use classical laboratory chemical analysis. The next study that I want to talk about is looking at basically a non-destructive assessment of chloride in persimmon leaves. So with this study, they're actually basically investigating how they want to be able to predict chloride levels, because at high concentrations it can be toxic to the plant. Unfortunately, chloride or chlorine on its own is not spectroscopically active. You can't just see it on its own, and therefore it's important to try to find something within the plant that the chlorine or the chloride is affecting, that you can then basically, by way of measuring that, measure the level of chloride within the plant. And it was really cool. They did a lot of investigation to see exactly what wavelength ranges were responding the most to these varying levels of chloride within the plant. And they found that the 2 different wavelength ranges that they saw that were having the most drastic changes based on chloride levels were actually the chlorophyll, where chlorophyll A has its maximum absorption. So that was really interesting to them, and so basically they were able to use that chloride or chlorophyll A bands to investigate chloride content, and then create a model that would predict the chloride based on just the spectra alone. So really cool. Another application. This is kind of to ensure that the plants aren't going to experience any sort of toxicity due to too much chloride buildup. And so that's a really important thing to reduce harm of the plant, and to be able to do it rapidly, non-destructively, is super important. And out in the field is just something that's going to be an indispensable tool for them. The third study that I want to go over is probably one of my favorites. So this one actually is taking the next step, the next evolution of what we anticipate for spectroscopy in this field. And so they're actually, we're looking at machine learning to basically allow for early detection of disease within plants. And in this specific study, they were able to deploy a variety of different methods to basically classify these leaves as far as the actual level of disease, or classify these leaves as far as level of disease is concerned. And so they wanted a classification system. And so they scanned a data set of the good part of the leaves and the bad part of the leaves. and they deployed a various number of chemometric techniques to see which one would kind of provide for the best diagnosis tool. And so they ended up using this generalized matrix relevance learning vector quantization method, which is a machine learning technique. And they also deployed other things like PCA, principal component analysis, was used, was investigated as well. But they basically were able to show that using the spectral data and building a model based on this classification tool, this machine learning technique, they were actually able to detect the presence of these diseases way before anything was visible on the leaf. And so weeks before the appearance of any sort of visual symptoms. And so it really highlighted the need for this kind of technology as opposed to the classical, visual, assessing images and analyzing images technique that is currently used. And so being able to detect your disease weeks before any sort of visual symptoms show up is obviously going to provide a huge benefit to anyone in the field, and be able to detect that and say, okay, we got to employ some sort of mitigation strategy here, as we're seeing infected plants in this area, and so we need to do something about it before it even gets so bad that the plant starts to show signs itself. So very cool applications. Those are three really powerful visualizations and studies of exactly kind of the intended use of this instrument. And so we're hoping that we'll see a lot more of these kind of studies as the new SpectraVue gets out in the hands of the users. So now I'll kind of go over some of the features, and then we'll go into some specifications, and then we'll get into the live demonstration. So the features of this instrument, I've already talked about how it's a single instrument. It's all in one. The screen's built into the instrument, and it's ready to capture and analyze data in a second. All it takes is clamping a leaf down into the lens and clicking the acquire button. It's super easy and intuitive to use. It's a touch screen interface. Everything's very laid out very intuitively. And one of the greatest things about this instrument is that we can perform reflectance, absorbance, and transmittance measurements simultaneously. So for instance, say you wanted to take a scan of a leaf and you wanted to use a reflectance-based index, and then you also wanted to measure an absorbance-based index. Well, now you can essentially just with a click of a button switch between those different measurements and see how those indexes, see what the actual levels of those indexes are in order to accurately get your index values and very quickly get those index values. So it doesn't require multiple scans. You just scan once, and then you can switch between the different measurements to see all your different index values, which is really cool. Another great feature is that the importing and exporting calculations is so much easier now. It's a very smooth process. Creating new indices is very simple. You just go to the measurement screen, and it's a very simple process. Exporting measurements is also an extremely easy process now. We have Wi-Fi capability. It's easy to tag measurements and classify them, so you know exactly what belongs to what, as far as if you're taking measurements in a large field study. So it's a really intuitive instrument that way, and it's really easy to export that data. And then obviously one of our favorite new features is that advanced chemometric functionality. So being able to use partial least squares regression modeling or principal component analysis or machine learning techniques to create these models, these predictive models, or just to create new customized indexes. So really excited about the SpectraVue. Some of the specifications, I'll just go over a couple of them. It's the 7-inch touchscreen display. It's an IPS display. The 3 measurement modes, as I mentioned, are reflectance, transmittance, and absorbance. Our spectral range of the spectrometer is 360 to 1100 nanometers. The signal to noise ratio is 330 to 1 at full signal. We have a 30 microsecond minimum integration time. And then the battery life is approximately 3 to 4 hours, but we use rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. So if you have a second set on you, you can just pop the new set in and be on your way with continuing to use the instrument. And there are two different types of trigger modes. There's an automatic mode and a manual mode in order to trigger those measurements. There are a lot more specifications to the instrument, obviously, but if you want to see those more in-depth specifications, you can visit our website at the product page itself, and Susie will post that link in the chat for you guys. And so that is where you will be able to see all the details of the specifications of the instrument. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to let Dylan take over, and he's going to kind of just go over all the features of the instrument live for you guys. And Dylan, I will go ahead and stop sharing. So if you want to take it away, feel free.
Sure, good morning.
Hey.
So here is the instrument right here in my hands. So we can see it's just like all contained in just one instrument, the whole thing. So we got, like he said, the screen's right here. And then like this is your leaf clip here. So you put in the like specimen right here. And then you got the back. We got just like the battery case holder where he was talking about is here. You can see it. And then a kickstand. So then what I would do today for you guys is I'm going to share my screen and actually show you guys the screen as we use this instrument. Here we go. So you guys should be able to see this now. So you can see exactly my screen right here.
Yep, looks good.
So as we can see, here's the instrument. So up top, you have your graph, and then down below, like these are for all your calculations. So to use this instrument, you just go up here, and on the touchscreen, you tap take a measurement, and it'll take a measurement just right away, just like that. And then next, we got to change all of our modes down here. So reflectance, transmittance, and absorbance. And then this is just to bring the screen back because this can be adjusted. So it just brings the screen right back into the middle. Right here is our measurements. So you can see, like I have 2 measurements on here right now, and I can delete these just like that. Right here is where we add calculations. So you, right up here, you click that to add calculations, and I'll show you guys that in just a minute. And then right down here is our settings pages. So we have a couple of different pages of settings. So our general page, we change the time and language. Right here, we have our spectrometer page. So you can change like your integration time, your smoothing, your scans to average. If you want to prompt for a like unique tag after every measurement, your lamp on and off times. And if you want to like automatically save measurements. Down here, we have our graph page. So this page has all kinds of fancy features. So in here, you can turn on the highlight calculation wavelengths to show like vertical lines for each of the calculation values that you're using. So if you have an indice at like R800 minus R600, you can see a line at 800 and 600 to know exactly which data is being used. And then right here is a measurement peak. So if you're searching out a specific peak in the spectra, you turn this on and you change these values here to be able to like narrow it down and find a peak. And then here's our live measurement mode. So on here, so by default, it's a single measurement. So you take measurement and it just shows a single line. But if you turn this on, you take a measurement and it just keeps taking measurements over and over and showing you like what happens as you swap a leaf out, pick up the clip, like you can see it all in real time. And then right over here is just to change like the wavelengths on the graph. So you can slide this up and down to get like a really narrow view or really big. So I'll just throw that back over there. So here's a calibration page, which I will actually calibrate for you guys right now so you can see the process. So you take like one of these little white standards that we have, and you insert it right into the leaf clip here, just right on top. And then you just hit the continue button. And then you take that out and you insert one of our black standards into the same spot. And you take that out and you can take your transmittance calibration. Perfect. So quick and easy, like nothing complicated. You just click, 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 and you're good to go. Down here is our Wi-Fi page. So you can connect to all different connections that you want to. You just hit connect and type in your password. And then right here, the diagnostic page. So if you need to figure out what's going on, like you got your GPS information, testing the sound and the light, checking temperature, and then resetting the device if you want it factory reset. And then down here, we have our about page. So it just has like a unit name, version, serial number, time, and our contact information if you need to call us. So if we go right back into calculations now, we can add a couple calculations. So we just hit this plus button. And then, so these are our pre-installed indices here. So if you want to just add an indice yourself, you can just type all of these in. You just click on them and then you just type it on the on-screen keyboard. But for today, I'll just add a couple indices. So we just add like an anthocyanin, a carotenoid. Let's just do one more. And like NDVI. There we go. So we added those in right there and go right back to the main page. So then just take the measurement. You just take the leaf, like I said, and then just put it right into the leaf clip. And then you hit the take measurement button. And it show up just right there. And so your data's down here and your spectra's up here. So if you just want to see just the spectra, you can pull that up or pull this down here to see just exactly what you want to see there. So we can just take a couple different leaves here. So you can see it's just as soon as you stick it in, you can just stick the leaf in and hit take measurement. It only takes just a couple of seconds. And then we can do another one. So these are a couple of different leaves. You can just see a couple of different examples of quick and easy measurement taking. So you can see the differences going on right there. And then my screen's kind of blurring, so you can't see the NDVI, but you can on the instrument. It's just my screen's kind of blurry here. So, and then next what I'll do is I'm going to unshare the screen and so you guys can see a full view and actually see the instrument like me typing it on the instrument rather than just on the screen. So you can see exactly how quick and easy it truly is. So if we hit stop share here, so you can see you have the instrument just right here. You just take your leaf, just put it right in there. And if I can find the button here, just tap the take measurement button. And it's just like that. So super easy, simple, like nothing complicated. You just tap the buttons and you're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Let's get back, let me pull back up the PowerPoint here. All right. So yes, so that's how simple the operation is. One thing I definitely didn't mention, which I'm glad Dylan did, was that live measurement mode. So that's great for if you were, for instance, trying to track a rapid change in an instrument due to a treatment or something of that nature, and you wanted to see, you know, in real time, a rapid decline and say a rapid increase in anthocyanins due to stress, or a rapid decline in chlorophyll after a leaf has been removed from the plant, or if you wanted to study those things over time, the live measurement mode is really useful for that. So thanks for showing that, Dylan. Appreciate it. So that was the live demonstration, and now we're kind of going to wrap up the end of our presentation here. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of applications and use cases for this instrument. Phenotyping, characterizing stress response, looking at maturity, looking at early disease detection, quantifying nutrients and phytochemicals in water, or using it in a classroom education setting. And so who can benefit from this? A lot of people: agronomists, plant physiologists, ecologists, educators, even people that are like commercial producers of leafy greens. So if you wanted to look at the quality of your spinach, for example, and you wanted to investigate the water content of that spinach, then you could look at that regularly with a model built by the CI710S SpectraVue. And this instrument, as Dylan just showed you, it's highly capable of taking rapid, non-destructive measurements. It takes under a second for that scan to take place, and it can be used out in the field. You know, it's a rugged instrument, it's field ready, and that data that you get, it's all shown on that screen. There's so many different data outputs with this instrument. That's what I love about it, is that there is the raw spectra, there's the index values, and you can use all of that. You can see it all on the screen, but then you can also use it all to create, you know, new indices, or to create these models and do further assessment with that. So it's very transparent, meaningful data that this instrument gives out. So that's going to wrap up our discussion today, and our sneak peek of the new SpectraVue leaf spectrometer. If you guys have questions related to actual applications of the instrument, so if you have an application that you aren't sure if it's going to work for, or if you want to know more if it, you know, if it has been done before, please reach out to myself or Eric, our other application scientist. You can, I'll have Susie post our emails onto the chat for me. And so please reach out to us if you have application questions. But if you want to reach out for other purposes, if you want to follow us on social media, or stay updated with what we're doing, our development projects, our new additions to our product lines, the best place to do that is on our website at www.cid-inc.com, or you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. And also, if you ever have any sort of inquiries about pricing or anything like that, you can reach out to our sales team at sales@cid-inc.com. We are located in Camas, Washington, in the United States, near Portland, Oregon. I would say, if it were different times, I would say that you can stop on by anytime, but for the time being, please no unexpected visits. We would appreciate that as we're navigating this pandemic still. So we're going to end this with the question and answer session. As I said, for sales inquiries, you can reach out to our sales team, or you can use this link if you want to pre-order the instrument. Then you can use this link right here that Susie's going to post on the chat. Click that link, it'll take you right to the pre-order page where you can enter all your information. Really seamless. But if you also would like to reach out to our sales team for some other kind of pricing inquiry, feel free to do that at the email or the phone number listed there below. So it looks like we definitely have some questions, and so Dylan and I both will work on answering these, and we'll go through them in the order that they were received. It looks like we have about 22 questions, and so Dylan, if I need some help answering something, then I will let you know. But I'll start off, I'll just be reading these out loud, and then I will let you know what my answer is for that. So the first question from Paul is, can we use the meter to measure bricks inside the leaf? And then he has a follow-up right after that that says also starch levels. And so what I would say is that bricks, absolutely, you can use bricks to measure inside the leaf. The starch levels might be a little bit trickier with the wavelength range of the instrument. I don't know for certain whether or not you would have success with starch levels. I know that bricks is definitely it's more than possible to measure the bricks levels, but starch, I would have to do some more research to see whether or not anyone's done it before. But I think that it's possible. I just don't know for certain whether or not that wavelength range of 360 to 1100 is going to be adequate enough to get the spectra that you need to create a model like that. So thank you, Paul, for that question. The next question from Sanjay is, any idea about chemometric techniques used in vegetable crops? If there's any paper regarding this technique, then please share it. I don't know of I didn't see any using our specific instrument, but there definitely are people using this spectroscopy and deploying chemometric techniques to investigate vegetable crops, absolutely. And looking at the leaves specifically, I don't have any papers. I can't think of any publications off the top of my head, but if you want to email me, we can discuss it further, and I can try to sleuth out some papers that actually show the use of spectroscopy to look at and to deploy chemometric techniques to look at quality traits of vegetable crops. So the next question is, what is the area of the leaf sensor, or what is the smallest leaf that can be measured, and what about thickness? So Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it was 3 millimeters or 30 millimeters. Which one? I actually don't remember off the top of my head how big the scan window is, or the lens of the instrument.
Off the top of my head, I believe it's 8 millimeters. I have to double check that, but I do believe.
Okay, so the actual lens is approximately 8 millimeters to a centimeter-ish in diameter. And as long as you can cover that whole area with the leaf, then that should be possible. A good workaround, so if you're working with really thin blades, so like for grass, for example, if you're working with something really thin, you can measure more than one at a time and fill that whole window with multiple blades of grass or multiple thinner leaves if you need to fill that entire window. You just want to be careful to make sure that as much of that window is covered as possible. And as far as thickness is concerned, you could see from the demonstration how wide that actual clamp goes. So you can't use it on something that's more than an inch thick, I would say. I wouldn't recommend it anyways. But as far as thinness goes, as thin as you want to go. Actually, the thinner the leaf, the more information you're going to get from the spectra, likely. Unless it's so thin that it's completely transparent, then you're probably just not going to really see much as far as the spectra is concerned. Most leaves are going to be accommodated by this. So the next question is, how could a leaf touching the soil surface, like an Arabidopsis leaf, be put in the leaf holder? So if something's really close to the surface of the ground, what you want to do is you want to turn it so it's horizontal, the actual instrument's horizontal, and then get that as close to the ground as possible. You can also invert it. The instrument can be used inverted. It can be used in any position possible. So you can also completely invert it so that the clamp is what's facing the ground, and get it right there next to the ground. But the minimum kind of clearance requirement is likely, if you had the instrument upside down, is probably at least ½ an inch, I would say, off the ground. Is the minimum you would need to be able to get that leaf clamped on. The next question is a logistics question from Enrique. Do this tool can travel in the carry-on luggage in the airplane, or does it have to go in the cargo area? Interesting question, because when we were traveling for conferences, we had to deal with this a lot, actually. You can carry it in your carry-on. The one thing about traveling with lithium-ion batteries is that they kind of require you to carry them in your carry-on. So if you want to store the instrument, then what you would have to do is take the batteries out and put that in your checked luggage that goes to the cargo area, and then keep the batteries on your person or in your carry-on. That's kind of the workaround that we have for transporting our instruments around. The next question is from Dr. Prasad. How to download raw data and conduct post-processing. So that data in the measurement section of the screen, there was the measurement section is indicated by that ruler icon on the side of the screen. When you go there and you can see your list of measurements, you can actually export all of them. And from there, you can select to export all that raw spectra over to your computer via the Wi-Fi network. You can also connect the instrument to the computer directly, but the Wi-Fi transfer is a lot more convenient. And so every measurement, when you export it, you can export all that data with it. The next question from Antonio is there a way it can be tested in specific fields here in Mexico? Cucumber plantation, mango trees, avocado trees, blueberry fields. So if you're interested in trialing the instrument, I know we have, we're currently working on our pre-orders first, but once all of our pre-orders and our initial orders are fulfilled, we will likely be able to have instruments available for trialing if that is something that you would like to look at.
We do have a distributor in Mexico, Antonio, and so it's likely that they will have a demonstration instrument, but I will, in the chat, send you their contact information.
Awesome. Thank you, Susie. So the next question from Vinti is, besides leaf, can we use this on other parts of plants like stem, spike, and flower? Absolutely. And also, you don't have to just use it on leaves. You could use it realistically on whatever can fit over that and fit in that leaf clamp. And so we've had in the past, people, using it on stems and other parts of the plant. But realistically, yeah, it's a field spectrometer. Whatever can go in that leaf clamp, you can get raw spectra from. Now, I won't say that if you went and tried to look at the spectra of, I don't know, like a dragonfly's wings or something, if you went and tried to look at that, the actual indices that are built into the instrument, those are more geared towards plants, so I don't think that would really translate, but the spectra would still be there. So that all that raw spectra, that is all still there. So that's useful information to have. So yes, it can be used on other parts of the plant, absolutely. The next question from Jay is, does the sample need to cover the entire leaf clip? I would want to use this for needle leaves species 2. Yes, so and I kind of addressed this with the previous question about the thin leaves. For needle leaves, you would definitely, what you would need to do is have multiple at a time. You would have to, and you do want to try to cover that entire leaf clip area. It's a small lens. I mean, it's less than 1 centimeter in diameter, but still you want to make sure that all that is covered. So you would need to kind of layer multiple of the needle leaves onto that lens in order to get an accurate representation of the spectra. The next question from Enrique is about, it looks like a distributor question. So Enrique, I encourage you to reach out to Susie directly to talk to her about opportunities in distribution. The next question from Richard is, how is data saved? Can it be saved to an Excel spreadsheet? I believe, and Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe our data is exported as a .csv file. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So a .csv file, it can be opened in a varying number of spreadsheet softwares, but yes, mainly if you have a computer equipped with the Microsoft Office suite, when you open a CSV, it's likely going to be opened in Excel, and then you can save it as an Excel spreadsheet, and from there, you know, do whatever manipulations you need to. The next question, so another distributor question from Somaya. Somaya, I recommend you also reach out directly to Susie via email to talk about distribution opportunities. The next question from Vincent is apparently this new version, the CI710S, has expanded the field of possible applications customers in comparison with the former CI710 unit. Yes, so we're trying to stay away from making too many comparisons to the old one, because this really is just kind of a new instrument, essentially. I mean, it's still using the same spectroscopy technique, but it is now just so much more robust in the way that it works, and adding this whole new component of chemometric analysis and chemometric modeling, that it really is just opening it up to a whole new field of studies. And I think that that's going to be kind of where, and opening it up to the whole machine learning and AI kind of avenue, which I think is going to be big, especially in like the disease detection fields. I think it's going to be a really important aspect of the instrument. So the next question is, I need references using this instrument. So we've got those 3 studies of our using the previous CI710, the current CI710 unit, which is operates on the same principles. It's also a leaf spectrometer. Completely different form factor, a little doesn't have the same you know, new functionalities that I just discussed. But if you go to Google Scholar and you just type in CI710 leaf spectroscopy, there is a number of studies out there that you have utilized our instrument, and so I recommend doing that. The next question from Jose Luis is, what will be the price in the US? And so if you want to get a quote, feel free to reach out to our sales team, and you can email them at the email there, or you can click the link to pre-order. Actually, I don't believe, Susie, does the pre-order link generate a quote as well?
The pre-order link actually, yes, it'll generate a quote. So if you're interested in pricing, use the link that I'm putting into the chat box, and we will send you pricing, or refer you to the distributor in your country who will provide pricing.
Awesome. Yes, so feel free to click that link if just for pricing. So thank you for that, Susie. The next question is, can we use the instrument without the batteries using some sort of adapter or something? And so yes, we do have the option of also running power directly into the instrument. It comes with a cable that you can connect. I think it's just a standard USB to USB-C. Is that what we're using, Dylan? I wonder if he's still there.
Yeah, no, it is USB-C.
Okay, so yeah, so it's, and then you can use that to power the instrument as well. If you're in like a laboratory setting or somewhere with access to power, then you can absolutely do that. The next question is an application question from Shiv. It's, how can we study photochemical reactions using this instrument? So you can look at the photochemical reactions look at a number of different ways. So you have the raw spectra that you can view. You can view it live. So if you do that live mode, like I talked about, you can actually see changes in the spectra, and especially if you focus on your, say for example, your chlorophyll A absorbance bands, and then you want to look at the reaction of that to some sort of treatment or to some sort of stress, then you can put it in live mode, and you can observe the changes in those absorbance values in those 2 different bands for the chlorophyll A. Same goes for beta carotene, for chlorophyll B. All of those, you can look at the specific wave bands on the spectra. We also have indices that were used in studies that look at just like the reflectance of anthocyanins or carotenoids or chlorophyll specifically. So you can also, simultaneously as looking at the spectra, you can also measure those reflectance indices to see how those change over time based on whatever is happening, whether it's like an environmental stress that you're looking at, or you're inducing some kind of stress to the plant. Yeah. The next question from Sonia is it possible to see the live demonstration of the PCA, et cetera, for modeling? So there is a lot of resources out there for learning how to do chemometric analysis. We don't have a demonstration yet for us for utilizing that. We are working on finishing a new type of tool to be used for model building, for chemometric model building. We use mostly partial least squares regression, but the new software that we have is going to be able to handle lots of different types of mathematics, like neural networks and machine learning and PCA, PLS. So once we have that finished, we will be doing a whole nother, either a webinar or a demonstration video to show that software. And that'll be software specific, but we will have some information about the chemometric model building in the future. The next question is regarding the tool, the preset crops, what class of DAT you have set, and it is applicable to subtropical areas like Peru or Chile coast, crops like peppers, avocados, table grapes, and blueberries. So if you're wondering about being able to use this instrument in different environments, kind of in like the subtropical areas on the leaves of these crops, so like avocado, the leaves of avocado trees or peppers or grapes, the tool should be able to handle most, it's built to be rugged, should be able to handle most conditions. The one thing you always want to keep an eye on, if it gets extremely hot, then you just want to make sure the instrument doesn't if you're using the instrument continuously and you're also in a very hot environment, you're pushing it as far as the risk of overheating the board, which at that point it automatically has a automatic shutdown feature to keep the internal board safe. And so you just want to keep your eye on that. There is, as Dylan showed us, in the settings of the instrument, there's a diagnostic tab, and that actually will show you the internal board temperature. So if you are using it in extreme conditions, like really, really cold or really, really hot, and you're using it constantly, you will want to kind of monitor that to make sure that at a certain point, you don't want it to just shut off until it cools down in the middle of an experiment or something like that. So it will work in all climates. It's just that you want to be a little bit safe in that regard. The next question from Gideon is, what nutrients can it measure and how accurate is it? So as far as nutrient content is concerned, that one study that we saw, micronutrients they had success with were nitrogen, copper, phosphorus, and sulfur, I believe. And so that's just one study. There is a myriad of other nutrients that you can create models for. The accuracy all depends on the quality of the sampled data. So the larger the data set and the more representative that data set is, likely the more accurate your model is going to be. And so I would recommend, if you're planning on doing some sort of nutrient prediction, like nitrogen, for example, that you make sure that your data set encompasses as it's just like any other kind of sampling with any other experimental setup, is that you want to make sure your sampling is representative of the entire population. So the more representative your sampling is, your spectra sample is for the model building, the better it's going to predict for your whole population. So there is no set accuracy, I guess. It's really up to the user to make it as accurate as they can. The next question from Vinti Do you have any instruments for measuring mesophyll conductance in plants? No, the answer to that is no, we do not. But we might have some things that can actually help you. I would recommend you reach out to me directly, and we can try to figure out which of our instruments might give you best the data that you're kind of looking for. The next question is it possible to use it with plants that grow in the salty marsh? Yes, as long as you are careful not to drop the instrument into the salty marsh. This instrument is not waterproof by any means, so don't try to submerge it in water. And just be careful, just being careful to maintain it, especially in salty conditions. Salt can erode metal components easily, so I would just be careful to, make sure you clean your instrument on a regular basis if you're going to use it in a salty marsh. The next question from Olive is, does sunlight affect the sensor during measurements? It does not, as long as the clamp is completely closed. So that clamp actually, there is a lamp built into the top of it and the bottom of it, which allows us to do the transmittance, absorbance, and reflectance all simultaneously. And so that clamp, when it's fully clamped down, there's no sunlight's not going to be able to get in. If you are using it for some sort of different purpose where the clamp is going to be kind of askew a little bit, then at that point sunlight could potentially affect the sensor. But if you're using it properly, covering the entire lens, and the actual leaf clamp is fully closed, then there should be no effect from sunlight. The next question from Dante is, how many leaves should I measure per tree? That is completely up to your experimental design. You want to make sure that you are having a large enough sample size that it's representative of your population, and that you are going to be able to actually get the confidence you need from your results to say that you are, that whatever you're investigating is a significant find or not. And so there's lots of tools on the internet for calculating sample size. So I would recommend if you inputting all your data into one of those, and so you can input your population size and all the different factors, and then it'll let you know what in order to have a significance level of less than 0.05, then you would need to sample this many leaves per tree. The next question is it possible to have subtitles in Spanish? We will, when we actually go to take this video, the recording of this webinar, we will, I believe, subtitle it in Spanish in order to put it, to allow the Spanish-speaking community to see this in Spanish.
And I'll speak to that actually for a multitude of languages. We put our recordings up on YouTube, and YouTube has a feature to add subtitles in over 25 languages. So many languages can be subtitled onto the recording, and all of you that are on the webinar today will be sent a link to the recording as soon as it's posted. Dylan, can you also speak to the operation of the instrument? Because I believe it does have the ability to switch to Spanish. Am I correct?
Yeah, so on that general page I showed you in settings, it has both English and Spanish, like completely built in automatically. You just tap between them.
Awesome. Sweet. So yeah, so thanks. So the instrument itself also will be in Spanish. You can change all the settings on the instrument so that everything will be in Spanish for you if you're a Spanish speaker. The next question is, what about measuring fruit tissue or fruit pulp for bricks, anthocyanin content? So yes, you can use this instrument. We also do have other instruments that are specifically designed for fruit, measuring bricks in fruit and measuring non-destructively using spectroscopy. So if you are interested in actually learning more about fruit, I recommend that you reach out to me directly, and I can show you some resources that show us some of our other instruments that we offer, depending on what exactly your application is. But if you're looking at maybe just the skin of the fruit, then it could potentially work. I only anticipate the biggest issue being the form factor, which is that leaf clamp kind of getting in the way, unless you're planning on destructively sampling and cutting away tissue and then putting it on there. But we do have other instruments that are designed for complete non-destructive analysis of fruit. So if you want to reach out to me directly, please do, and I can put you in touch with some of those instruments. The next question is, are the spectra affected by rapid changes in ambient temperature? So yes, I guess the long answer, or the short answer to that is yes, the spectra will be affected by rapid changes. So if you, for instance, were standing in a normal laboratory room temperature, taking constant, doing the live view of a leaf, and then you walked into a sub-zero freezer, then yeah, it is going to alter the spectra slightly. So you want to make, but if it's a you know, a change of a normal kind of environmental change, then likely you aren't going to see that much of a difference. But for instance, if you're trying to collect spectra for building a model and you're in an area where the climate does change really rapidly, then you're going to want to collect data from all of those different conditions so that the model kind of takes that into account. So that it's kind of built into the model that there are these environmental changes that you're dealing with. But if you're just trying to look at comparing spectra from this day when it was, you know, today it was 25 degrees C, the next day it was 30, you're not going to see too much of a difference in those days. But like I said, rapid, super extreme changes, sure, you will see some difference. So the next question is, so this works on leaves only. Can you use it for some quality measurements on vegetables like edamame? Yeah, so actually, yeah, absolutely. You could use it for edamame. You could use it for, you know, other types of beans, you know, or green beans, or you know, smaller vegetables that are more flat and, you know, that aren't, you know, like large pieces of produce, then absolutely this instrument can be used for exactly that. You can build these models using the spectra to look at things like dry matter or, you know, bricks of these vegetables. So yeah, absolutely. And the next question is, oh yeah, is it the same for any leaf tissue or should it be calibrated? Thinking of really waxy leaves versus not very waxy leaves. No, it operates the same for all leaves, no matter what, no matter how waxy or not waxy they are. The waxiness is going to alter the spectra, but that's part of the leaf, and that's something that you want to know. You don't want to remove that kind of, because there's going to be a little bit of extra reflectance from the waxiness. But you're still going to be able to, with the NIR region, penetrate through that visible and then get into the actual plant tissue itself. It operates the same way. You don't need to calibrate it any differently for waxy versus not waxy. You just use those two calibration standards that Dylan demonstrated for us earlier. That's the only calibration you need. The next question is a Dylan question. Is it Windows-based or Android user interface?
So it's actually Windows-based, but it has our own software on it, so you won't ever see the Windows portion. It's just running off of the Windows base of code. Right.
Yeah. So it's not actually. Yeah, you won't ever have to do anything like see the Windows Start menu or anything like that. The only thing you'll ever see on the window is our software, the software that's built into the instrument. The next question is, how many measurements can be recorded until the memory is full, and how are these coded, e.g. numerical series? Dylan, that's another great question for you.
So you could record thousands of measurements, and then these are coded, which I guess I could have showed you guys. But so like he had said, they're in CSV format when they come out. So if you export them, they're in CSV format, and they're just formatted by the last taken to the most recently taken. So it's all in order of time taken. And then they are XML files prior to being like exported. So you can copy and drop those between different instruments if you want. So if you take a whole bunch of one, you can just drag and drop them over to another one, and they all just show up on that one as well.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so when you actually take the measurements, they're stored by date and time taken. So the most recent is first, and then the oldest is at the very bottom. And so, but you also have the option of going in and tagging those. And like as Dylan showed, there is an actual setting where it can prompt you to tag it as you take or when you take a measurement. So that you always have, so if you wanted to add your own kind of series, your own classification system to these measurements, you can do so with these tags. The next question is, can the CI710S measure fruit reflectance? As I mentioned earlier, please reach out directly to me. We have a whole other line of instruments that are geared towards produce and fruit specifically. Which are a more appropriate form factor for the instrument. The next question, actually, I think I already addressed that one about the sample, about the needle leaf species covering the entire leaf clip. So yeah, yep, you want to make sure you stack, if you have thin leaves or needles that you're looking at, you want to make sure that they're covering the entirety of the lens, which means you'll have to use multiple leaves. The next question is, can those pre-installed indices be used on a wide variety of plants? Yep, you can use the indices on whatever you scan. So any leaf that you decide to measure, those indices can be applied to those measurements. So it doesn't matter the type of plant. There's no limitations to the types of plants you can measure with this instrument. The next question is, how does the equipment adjust to varied external temperatures and humidity? As I mentioned earlier, so extreme temperature changes, you'll want to be wary of. You want to be consistent as possible. Obviously, in the field, things aren't always consistent. But in the super extreme temperatures, you want to make sure you're looking at those the board temperature in order to make sure that your instrument isn't going to overheat if you're using it consistently. Plus, the external heat is high, plus the internal heat is high. It's going to cause the instrument to go into emergency shutdown mode. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring that situation in the diagnostic menu. But humidity, it should not be too much of an issue. I would just, like I said, if you're going to use it in like a marsh or something like that, just make sure you don't actually drop it or submerge it into water. It's not completely waterproof. So. The next question we will share is asking if we will share the recorded webinar. As Susie mentioned, it will be put up on YouTube, and then we will share it with everyone that was an attendee today, or everyone that signed up for the webinar will get a link to the recording, and those recordings can be then translated into a variety of languages through YouTube. The next question is, what about the data spectra? There are enough information to identify the spectra, or only the more common one? For example, how can I identify a specific disease in eucalyptus or hydric stress? So when you're looking at disease identification, like that paper that I presented earlier, it's going to take some research on your end to identify and to be able to classify basically these diseases and then match it up to the specific spectra taken with the measurements that you took of the plant. And so building a classification model, I would highly recommend you going and reading that paper. It'll give you some really good ideas for how to go about building a sort of classification model to detect that disease early in eucalyptus. The next is, can we predict shelf life with your spectrometer? So shelf life is a kind of a tough thing to just predict with any sort of measurements. But typically looking at something like water activity is your best predictor. Our instruments don't do water activity. We can look at moisture content, which you know, is just a general indication of how much water is in the plant, not or in whatever you're measuring, not necessarily how much is available, you know, to the environment and how much is bound within the plant. So I would say that I mean, other parameters like you know, fat content or lipid content, things that can go rancid fast. Those are all things that that our instrument I don't think necessarily will help you with predicting shelf life. They might be able to predict those parameters. I don't know if it's going to actually help you predict the shelf life of your whatever your product is. The next question from Daniel is about the previous question. Oh, baby spinach shelf life. Okay. So you could look at things like, you know, the actual water content. You could look at things that cause, you know, the spinach to go bad, but exposure to, you know, too high levels of oxygen or what have you. But if you want to look at actual shelf life, I think that looking at your storage conditions is probably the best indicator of you know, what is going on with your shelf life. So if you're looking at, if you have it packaged in, say, controlled atmosphere bags, we have other products that might help you better than this instrument. So I would recommend you reach out to me directly and we can talk about some solutions for you for looking at your shelf life of your baby spinach. So the next question is, can it measure active phytochrome? So we don't have any sort of direct measurement technically for any actual individual phytochemicals or any sort of you know, direct molecular, you know, quantification. It's mostly the process of measuring something is going to be through the model building process of relating spectra to actual, you know, analytical values acquired in the laboratory, and then through that building a predictive model that you could use. So it doesn't have anything built in for direct measurement of that, but you can certainly attempt to build a model yourself using the spectra acquired from the instrument. The next question is, how frequently does it need calibration? And so best practices in general, and because calibration takes so little time, you know, Dylan demonstrated it, it's less than 30 seconds. I would recommend just doing it every time before you start taking measurements. You know, every time if you notice things starting to shift significantly in your spectra. So if you're taking, say, repeat measurements of something and you should be seeing similar spectra over and over again, but you start to see a gradual shift, either, you know, up or down, then that might be an indication that you need to recalibrate and then go back and start taking measurements again. So just be aware of that, but I would recommend it at a minimum, just do it every day before you start taking measurements. The next question is, does it require calibration annually at the factory, or can it be done on site? The calibration is exactly what Dylan demonstrated. It's just using those two different, the dark and the white sensor, or the calibration pads, and just using those. It takes 30 seconds. You just do it yourself before you take measurements. Send it to the factory. The better to us is if you encountered some sort of issue that was you know, an issue internally with the instrument or something like that. The next question is, what is the maximum sensor life? So Dylan, you might be able to help me with this, but if it's anything like some of our other instruments, you shouldn't see, I mean, we still, at least 5 years, more than 5 years. We've had instruments out there for quite a long time that have the spectrometers are still going strong. The lamps are still going strong. There isn't really a, I guess, maximum sensor life that I know of yet, unless Dylan, you have a different answer for that.
You're exactly right. Like spectrometers are extremely stable. So unless you're, dropping it or you broke it physically, it should last for a very, very long time.
Yeah, there is, we have yet to encounter anyone reaching their actual maximum sensor life of their spectrometers. So when we do, we'll finally know. But so far, it's a lot of years, at least 5 or more years. So yeah, you should be fine on that, unless you're, like Dylan said, unless you're physically, have broken your spectrometer. It should run just fine for quite a while. And then the last question is, again, a reiteration of can you measure conifer needles? As I mentioned before, yep, you're just going to have to use more than one at once. You're going to have to measure multiple so you can cover that whole scan window. And I think that is it for the open questions. That was 59 questions. So awesome. Thank you guys for engaging. Appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions. If there's something that comes up in your mind later that you realize you wanted to ask, feel free to email me. I will be more than happy to answer you. And thank you guys all for joining us today, and appreciate it. And I hope you learned a lot about the new SpectraVue. If you need the pricing information, please click that tiny URL link. You'll get a quote, and then also you can be put on the pre-order list so for when we actually release these instruments. You can be one of the first ones to receive these the SpectraVue. So thanks again, and thank you, Dylan, for doing the demonstration. Thank you, Susie, for moderating, and everyone have a great day.